So, as we are now just one day away of the renew of the rivalry between the U.S. versus Mexico, that's going to be taking place tomorrow in Cincinnati for the World Cup Qualifier, I thought this would be a perfect time for me to do a video, kind of talk about that game, and kind of almost in some ways, kind of like a little bit of a hype video, talking about these two rivals and how these last two meetings has gone, because there's no doubt that these last 10 meetings, there's been some crazy games that have been added in terms of this rivalry. And obviously I know that a lot of people of course talk about the famous Dos Saro moment as the top tier in terms of this rivalry, but I could argue that there have some games, and especially some recent ones between both of these teams, that are easily top there in terms of the Dos Saro moment that we seen back in the early 2000s. But we begin by talking about the last 10 meeting by talking about the one between April 21st and 2014, and I'm actually going to include friendlies into it, even though I was debating where or not should I include friendlies into it. But the reason why I probably won't do it is because I don't kind of quite remember some of these games, and some of these games I gotta also be honest, the fact that I don't remember what memorable thing that happened in some of this one. And one of those is the first one we're going to talk about, which again happened on April 21st in 2014, where it was a 2-2 draw between both of these teams at State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. Again, I don't know much about that game, but of course the next game I know U.S. fans will definitely remember this game in a good way, because in the next year around the same time in April 15, when they take on Mexico again at the Alamo Dome in San Antonio. Would you look at that? It's that scoreline again, Dos-0 in a friendly. And again, anytime when the scoreline ends 2-0, everybody's gonna reference that scoreline, and that I'm pretty sure a lot of U.S. fans was definitely they referenced that score line when they were able to beat Mexico 2-0 in that friendly. Now the very next one, this, believe it or not, is the one that not only means kind of a lot to me, because of the fact that I actually went to this game. Like, I have only went to one U.S. versus Mexico game, and this was one of them on October 10th, 2015, in the CONCACAF Cup. Although the real name of this game is really the battle of who is going to be representing the CONCACAF region in the Confederation Cup in Brazil, and it turns out it was Mexico, the one that of course represent that, because they were able to win 3-2 after extra time. And I remember that was a game where, yeah, the atmosphere was absolutely electric in that one. There was like 94,000 fans inside the Rose Bowl. Mexico of course took an early lead, and then I remember, I think, was it Clint Dempsey, the one that immediately equalized just a couple of minutes after Mexico took the lead, and then the game remained tied until we had to extra time, where Mexico took the lead once again, and then I think it was Bobby Wood, the one that ties the game up at 2 apiece, before Mexico literally score an amazing goal. And I still remember the guy that scored the amazing goal, Paul Aguilera. He scored an absolute scorcher of a goal from about 28 yards out on the right to really just break the hearts of the Americans, and basically give Mexico the 3-2 win. And I also remember how, I was sitting on the U.S. side, but, on the other side where a bunch of the Mexican fans, yeah, they were going absolutely nuts when that goal went in, and you just can sense how much it means to them. But at the same time, yeah, that was kind of a bit of a humbling experience. Though at that point, I was kind of one that was rooting for the U.S., but, I was kind of, in some way, was being a kind of a neutral too. And that goal that Paul Aguilera score, I just simply cannot be mad at that. I mean, that was just a world class kind of goal. But the only thing that I think U.S. fans are going to be mad about is that it happened on the 117th minute. So yeah, that was definitely one of the most intense game we've ever seen in this rivalry. But then both of these teams would meet each other once again in November 11th in 2016, when they had, of course, the World Cup Qualifier for 2018, and this was the one that, of course, was at Columbus. And obviously the U.S. decided to play this game in Columbus because they always have that good record against Mexico in the U.S., and I believe they never lost to Mexico when they were playing in Columbus until this game. They lost 2-1 in this one. I think this was a game where Mexico was actually up 2-0 in this, or maybe it was actually the other way around where the U.S. were up 1-0. But either way, this was a big shocker because at this point, Columbus and Montford Stadium was an absolute fortress for the U.S. and it was literally the house of horror for Mexico whenever they go to Columbus to trying to get 3 points against the U.S. And not to mention the fact that that is the site of the infamous Dos 0 moment that we saw back in the early 2000 in the World Cup qualifier. So, again, and that was really a big shocker. And then after the next game, it was even more of a shock, the fact that the U.S. lost 4-0 against Costa Rica. And that was, of course, the game that cost Jurgen Klinsmann his job. I mean, Jurgen Klinsmann, I think coming into this game, he was already under a lot of pressure, but this game definitely kind of put him on the brink, and then that 4-0 result against Costa Rica pretty much cost him the job. But on the next time when they play against each other in the away World Cup qualifier, the U.S. also did something that they don't usually do very, very often, which is able to get a point at the Estadio Azteca. So, as I said with Mexico, when they do play against the U.S. on U.S. soil, it always tends to not end well for them. But the opposite is true in the fact that when the U.S. are playing against Mexico in Mexican soil, and especially at the hostile environment that is the Estadio Azteca, they just tend to never get victory against Mexico there. But that was a game where they got a 1-1 draw in that one, and I remember that was the game when I think Michael Bradley basically scored a 40-yard kind of goal where he basically just chipped it over the head of Ochoa, and that was definitely a goal that I'm pretty sure shocked everybody, including myself, because the audacity of Bradley even tried to do that, and especially in front of the Mexican fans, that was just absolutely amazing. And that, of course, gave the U.S. a 1-0 lead before they did kind of get pegged back, I believe, in the 34th minute. But ultimately, that was a very good result considering the fact that, again, this is a team that whenever they play against Mexico at the Azteca, it's usually an automatic loss. But to get a point that kind of made up for what happened in the previous meeting when they were playing against them in Columbus, and were not only did not get the result, but also lost that game. Then the very next game, they played a friendly in 2018, and this, of course, was post 2018 World Cup, where certainly the U.S. men's national team was still kind of suffering from that post-mortem of them missing out on the World Cup, and also fan interest of this team was kind of at an all-time low. But they did win 1-0 against Mexico at Nissan Stadium, though that happiness didn't last long until the next year when they played against them in the Gold Cup final, and they lost that 1-0 against Mexico. And I think it was Jonathan Dos Santos, the one that scored the only goal in that game to break the U.S. heart. And that was also a very competitive game, but at the same time, it was just a game that the U.S. really never kind of got into it. And also, I haven't talk about stadium choices, but this was definitely a very interesting choice to play this game at Soldier Field. Although I think maybe the people that organized the event, which is CONCACAF, I don't think they realized that there was going to be a U.S. versus Mexico game, or at least they might have been persuaded by the Mexican Federation to play this game in Chicago, because anytime when you're playing a Mexican game in Chicago or even in LA, where it is there's a huge Mexican kind of population, and it's basically a Mexican stronghold. Yeah, it was not surprising the fact that this was literally an away game for the U.S., even though they were playing at home at Soldier Field. And yeah, it's unsurprised that they, of course, lost 1-0 there. And then they virtually played another away game. This time it was a friendly just 2 months after, where they took an embarrassing 3-0 loss against Mexico. Again, fan interest of this team was really still at an all-time low, because people were still having that nightmare of them not able to make it to the World Cup back in 2018. And this definitely does not help the way that, even if it's a friendly, it was an absolute disaster with the way that they lost 3-0 in favor of a very pro-Mexican crowd at MetLife Stadium. Now, that moves now to kind of present time and what we saw in this past summer, where, yeah, this past summer, this is when we can say proudly as a U.S. fan that we pretty much own Mexico, especially in final tournament, because not only the fact that they were able to win the CONCACAF Nations League final and become the first champion in that competition. In a game where I will always say that this game, alongside with Dos Cero, is going to be the most famous USA versus Mexico game we have seen. Like, this was just peak rivalry moment, where I still remember this was the game where not only it was back and forth, but there was the penalty, and then there was just kind of VAR debacle and stuff like that. And then who would not forget the incredible save that Ethan Horvath, who stepped in this game for Zach Steffen and make an incredible save in the 118 minute, and then of course we had that crazy 13-minute stoppage time, because there was kind of like a melee that was going on in stoppage time. Like, basically everything that you want to see in a US versus Mexico rivalry was checked off in that game. I mean, that was just such an insane kind of game, and it's great that after all that insane moment, the US for once actually came out on the right end of it, and they came out on the right end of it again on the most recent US versus Mexico game in the Gold Cup final, where that was a game that was also kind of insane with the way it was also kind of a game where you just kind of feel like there was only one goal that separated between both of those teams, and that goal by Miles Robinson in the 117 minute, that is definitely going to be another famous moment in this rivalry, to finally say that the US have beat Mexico in a final. Because while it's great that they beat them in the Nations League final, I feel like the Gold Cup final means a lot more, knowing they want some revenge of what happened in 2019, and they got exactly that, and also by the same score line too. So yeah, that pretty much now brings us to kind of present day in terms of this rivalry tomorrow. And again, whatever happened tomorrow, I have a feeling there is gonna be some really big reaction coming out of tomorrow. Obviously, I hope that the US can, of course, once again gets the best out of Mexico, because I think that definitely will give a lot of confidence, not only to the US for the rest of the World Cup qualifier, but it makes the fan base believe that maybe they have finally got past that problem that they had in 2017. But let's say if they do not get a win in that game, if they do not get a win in that game, I'm just going to kind of maybe go on a bit of a positive note, even though I know if they don't win that game, there's going to be a lot of doomers that's going to say that this team is going to fall apart, and that they want Greg Berhalter to be fired, and that they're not going to make it to the World Cup. But I'll just say that it's just one game, and yes, I know it sucks, the fact that they lose to Mexico at home once again in a World Cup qualifier, and the last time that happened, they missed the World Cup entirely. But again, I'm just kind of a person that, as big as this game is, overall, the U.S. versus Mexico is not going to be the one that determine whether or not if the U.S. are going to make it to the World Cup. I mean, it is one of their biggest rivals that they might have to face in terms of getting that World Cup spot. But at the end of the day, that old saying, it's a sprint. The World Cup qualifier is basically, actually, let me say that again. The old saying goes that the World Cup qualifier basically is a marathon, and it's not a sprint. And I feel like this game between the U.S. versus Mexico feels more like a sprint, and that, if you look at the long term of this World Cup qualifying stage, I don't think that game is going to determine the fate of whether or not the U.S. are going to qualify for the World Cup or not. They still have tons of games the big World Cup qualifier games that they need to win, and so far they kind of have passed the test in a way that I know there's been times where the fan base have still complained about some of the result that they had in the World Cup qualifier and the team not playing very well. But at the end of the day, when you're at a World Cup qualifier and when you're at a tournament like this, you just need to survive. And again, tomorrow it'll be great to see if they can once again do that and get another statement win against Mexico. And I believe if they do that, they will be at the top spot of the CONCACAF World Cup qualifying standing. But if they do not win, I'm just going to be ready for all the doomers out there and all those people that's going to think the sky is basically falling, when in reality, I think if they lose that game, depending on how other resort is, at the very worst, I think the U.S. is not going to drop below that line where it's the difference between teams making it to the World Cup and the team that is not going to be making the World Cup in that third through fifth place, or third through eighth place kind of spot. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this video, and what's your favorite memory in terms of the last 10 head-to-head between the U.S. versus Mexico, and what do you think tomorrow game is going to look like? Obviously, tomorrow I will be doing a review of that game right after when that game is finished. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys do a like, smash the subscribe.